Today I would like to write down the equations of motion, which are called Euler equations of motion. Okay, they will be telling us how the angular velocities, for example, change with time. Okay, but before I do so, let's just pause for a minute and try to recollect or realize what we have used in figuring out the motion of all these stops that we talked about. Okay, in all the discussion that we have had so far, never used any equations of motion. All we used was, if you recall, only the conservation principles. So we were using like energy conservation or angular momentum conservation, not or and also we, if you recollect, wrote down our first integrals by just looking at which of the coordinates are cyclic. Okay, so these were the ingredients in our analysis. We never used any equations of motion in the analysis till now. But today I want to write down an equation of motion, which we will use to give one example. Hopefully I'll do that. So, but before I do that, I should talk a bit about rotating frames of reference and how time derivatives are related in two. Okay, so the title is rotating frames of reference. So what we do is we imagine one frame which is inertial. Okay, another frame which is rotating with respect to this inertial frame. Okay, rotating frame. Let me write frame. Okay, you may imagine that the origin of inertial frame and origin of rotating frame are coinciding at all the time, so they are at the same place. Okay, and the rotating frame is rotating with respect to the inertial frame omega, which is the angular velocity, and this may depend on time as well. Okay, so omega will be a function of time for us. And what we want to ask is, if there is a vector given to us and we are looking at its change with time, so if I am looking at the time derivative of A in the inertial frame, how is it related? What is the relation of this time derivative with the time derivative in rotating frame? Okay, so what we are asking is, if I am given a vector A, how are dA over dt, this quantity calculated in the inertial frame, and dA over the same vector, now if you are looking at the time derivative in the rotating frame, how are these related? Okay, so let me see. Yeah, now how are we going to proceed with this? So always whenever this question arises or such questions arise, think of a prototype of a vector. So what's the prototype of a vector? What's the basis on which vectors have been defined? The prototype is the position vector. Okay, so imagine a position vector of some point, okay, which is, let's say, not changing with time in the rotating frame. Okay, if that vector is not changing with time in the rotating frame, it means dA over dt is 0. So you can think of some vector which is, as viewed from the inertial frame, is moving together with the rotating frame. If it helps to visualize, you can imagine a rigid body where body coordinates have been fixed in it. Okay, and the body is rotating, and you are looking at some point in the rigid body, and as far as the motion of the that point, any point P in the body is concerned, it's not changing with time if you are looking from the body coordinates. Okay, so that's the kind of thing I'm imagining. So if you look at a point which is stationary in the rotating frame, then clearly dr over dt of that point in the body is 0. But the same thing is not 0 if it is looked from the inertial frame. So from the inertial frame, it will appear, of course, to be rotating, and you know it will be this. Okay. Now what if that point we are looking at, it's not a point in the it's not a point which is stationary in the rotating frame, but that point itself is moving. Okay, so meaning there is a non-zero rate of change of that r. Okay, so we have a non-zero dr over dt in the body frame, and then we ask how it is related to the dr over dt in the inertial frame, and obviously the answer is the following. You write dr over dt, the velocity in the inertial frame, okay, is equal to the time derivative in the body frame plus omega cross r. Okay, so that is how the prototype of a vector transforms, that is how the prototype vector has its time derivative related in the two frames. So if you are looking at any other vector, it has to obey the same rule, because it has to exactly follow what the prototype does. So let's say your vector is generically denoted by capital A here, then we have the relation d over dt calculated in the inertial frame it's too big here, but yeah, a, let me put a, will be equal to d over dt evaluated in the body frame. So that's a operator that is acting, and this entire operator will act on the vector a. Okay, so that's the general relation we have. And of course the vector a, vector has its meaning independent of the coordinates. Okay, coordinate system, you choose to write its components. So it's up to you in which components you want to break it up. So you may choose to write vector a in either the body coordinates or rotating coordinates. I have been calling, initially I call it rotating, but then I started calling it body because I was imagining a rigid body which is moving. But anyway, you can write here rotating also if you wish, slash rotating. Okay, so up to you whether you want to decompose vector a in the body coordinates or the inertial coordinates or the fixed coordinates. Okay, that is a separate issue, and what this relation is saying is about the time derivative, how they are related. Okay, that's fairly simple. Now I'll give you an exercise to do, which is again not difficult. So please show that if you are looking at the acceleration in an inertial frame, so if you have some point which is moving around and you look at the acceleration of it, then show that the acceleration of a point in an inertial frame which I denote by A inertial, okay, that will turn out to be the following. It will have one term which will equal to the acceleration of that particle in as viewed from the rotating frame, plus some more pieces. One is omega cross r. Okay, omega is the angular velocity of the frame, okay, and r is the coordinate of that particle which you are looking at, plus 2 omega cross the velocity of that particle as found in the rotating frame, plus omega dot cross r. Okay, and yes, that's all. Let's see, 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4, the 4 terms, correct. Okay, so this is what you'll get, and here is a hint to do this. What you should do is go back to this relation which you have derived. Let me call it equation relation number 1. Okay, use this twice. So you take this instead of, take the vector a to be the vector r, so it will connect your velocities into frames, and then you put the v inertial here, and then you will get the acceleration in the inertial frame, and on the right hand side you'll get all these terms. Okay, so please do this simple exercise. So hint was use relation 1 twice. Okay, so what does that all mean? It means that if you are looking at, for example, some object which is moving around and experiencing some forces, then I know that the forces according to Newton's second law is this. Okay, that's the Newton's second law. It says that the forces are mass times the acceleration in the inertial frame. Okay, and to this F you will be able to associate some physical origins, like you will be able to say that it is being pulled by Earth, or it is being pushed around by some electromagnetic forces. You'll have always a physical origin to F. Okay, so there will be some agent which will be pulling or pushing it around, and that's why you'll have the inertial acceleration. Okay, but now let's ask how things appear if you view the same object accelerating in a rotating frame of reference. Okay, so let me do this. All I have to do is so take this here expression here and multiply throughout by the mass of the particle. Okay, and when I'm looking from as viewed from rotating frame, I will be, if I'm looking at the acceleration of that object and I multiply by mass, then I am looking at this quantity, ROTATI. Okay, so that's what you will see, and this will be what? M times A. So I multiply throughout, and here M times inertial will be the force, which is the true force on it. So I get the force minus all these terms here multiplied with M. So you'll have minus M omega cross R. Then you have minus 2M omega cross V in the rotating frame. And then you have, why is there a, I think it should be minus, let's check, correct, it should be minus omega dot cross R. Okay, so that's what you will have. Is that all correct? It is all correct. Okay, so if you are in a frame which is rotating and you look at the acceleration of some object, then it will not match with the Newton's law, because whatever sources you will see for the force on this object will not be sufficient to get this piece, because as viewed from the rotating frame there are additional pieces, so you can call them as fictitious forces because they do not have any physical origin. It's not coming from some push or pull of some physical origin. They are fictitious because you are in the rotating frame. Okay, so you have to use this as your force to arrive at the left hand side, and these fictitious forces are called, this one is called your centrifugal force. So this entire quantity. Okay, so all this is from the point of view of the rotating frame, not from the inertial frame. Okay, and this is your Coriolis force. Okay, so it has a velocity dependence on this, and then there is another piece if the angular velocity itself is changing with time. Okay, if omega dot is 0, meaning angular velocity is constant, then this term is absent, but in general it will be there, and it's called Euler force. Okay, so that's one exercise. I think this is fine. Okay, very good. Now what I want to do next is use this relation 1 which we have derived to write down equations of motion for omega, okay, which are called Euler equations of motion. Okay, it's not looking nice. Euler's EQU equations of motion. Okay, that we can apply for rigid bodies. So I'm not going to use the Lagrangian formulation. I will start from Newton's equations. Okay, and we know that the rate of change of angular momentum is equal to the torque which is acting on that body. Okay, so this is being calculated in the inertial frame, and this is the external torque which is acting on it, okay, which I denote by N. Okay, and with the help of what we had earlier here, this relation, so now for A I have used the angular momentum, so I can replace it by this operator acting on the angular momentum. Okay, so I will write it as your N or dl over dt calculated in the body frame plus omega cross L. This will be equal to the torque. Okay, now I'll drop the reference to body frame. It will be understood that I'm working in body frame, so I drop body. Okay, and I write down the components of this equation. So these are three equations. So let me look at the ith component of this equation. So I get dli over dt plus what's the cross product? It's, you can use Levi-Civita tensor to write it. So it's epsilon I j k omega j L k, and this will be equal to Ni. Okay, is that fine? Yes, that's correct. Now I can take the body axis to be aligned with the principal axis. Okay, so let's say body axes are aligned with the principal axis. With the principal axis. If that is the case, then your L is just I times omega, where I are the principal moments. Otherwise, you have the full relation. LK would be I K L omega L, where you'll be dealing with the full tensor. Okay, but if you choose the principal axis, then L becomes simpler. So you have LK is I K omega K, and remember there is no summation over K here. Okay, K is free index. Look on the left side, K is free, so there is no summation implied here, even though they are repeated. So if I substitute this, I get, let me write here. So LK I substitute here, so I get I of subindex I d omega over dt, okay, d omega I over dt, plus epsilon I j k omega j lk would be I k omega k, and this will be equal to Ni. So these are set of 3 equations. In this term also there is no summation over I, even though they are repeated, because you see there was only one index I. It's just because of this expression it looks like this. And here also, even though the k is appearing 3 times, there is no mistake, which I hope you understand very well because of this. So it's I told you I think at some point of time that repeated indices cannot appear 3 times. Generally they will mean it's a mistake, but there may be occasions when they can appear. Okay, so there is a summation over k in this. There's no summation over I in this, and now I just want to write it for all the 3 components explicitly. So using the antisymmetry of epsilon I j k, you can write down the following: I1, and this will be omega 1 dot plus or minus omega 2 omega 3 I2 minus I3. Okay, this is fairly easy to see and you will be able to do it, so I don't have to tell. And then if you look at the second component, I2 omega 2 dot, then you have omega 3 omega 1 I3 minus I1 is equal to N2. Okay, and then you have I3 omega 3 dot minus omega 1 omega 2 I1 minus I2, and this will be N3. Okay, please try to do this simple algebra, and these are called our Euler equations of motions. Okay, these are called let me put some bracket or something. Okay, so we have obtained the Euler equations of motion, and we'll stop the video here and I'll see you in the next video.